Continuing our unit on secular song, actually the last chapter in this unit is chapter 62, entitled New Sound Palettes, mid-20th Century American Experimentalists. And this chapter in the text covers two composers, and we're going to do the secular song went on George Crumb, and then John Cage, his piece on piano music, prepared piano, we'll study when we do the unit on piano music. So it tells us here that contemporary music often calls for innovative and highly virtuosic instrumental or vocal effects that challenge performers to new technical levels. And George Crumb does that in his 4 books of madrigals, which treat the voice as a virtuosic instrument. And he set texts by the Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca. A number of Garcia Lorca's poems have been used by composers. George Crumb and avant-garde virtuosity. There's our avant-garde word. 1922, and actually he just died this year, 2022. An American, studied in the Midwest, right? University of Illinois, University of Michigan, and taught in Colorado, New York, and in Pennsylvania. Won a Pulitzer Prize in 1968 for one of his compositions. His influences are non-Western sounds, and you can hear perhaps that in his music, folk themes, and art music tradition. I'm not that informed or knowledgeable on George Crumb's music, other than a few examples. He uses Sprechstimme. Remember this part, the spoken melody? We studied that in our Schenberg example, the Perrault Lunaire. He uses quarter tones, which normally music is divided into half tones. C to C sharp is a half tone, C sharp to D is a half tone, but a quarter tone is a tone that's in between C and C sharp, and you cannot do that on the piano. Charles Ives did, and we'll talk about that later. And a lot of people, a number of people, composers have experimented with quarter tones. White tones, I don't know what that is. And a lot of experiment with timbres. We'll hear that in his music. He wrote 4 books of madrigals. Remember we studied madrigals in our secular choral music? Wrote music for amplified piano. George Crumb, 1929-2022. That's a pretty good age to achieve. We're going to look at his piece entitled Caballito Negro, which is from his 2nd book of madrigals. Just mentioned that he wrote 4 books of madrigals. And this piece that we're going to sample is very short, and it's for soprano with metallic percussion instruments and flute or piccolo. And the voice is displayed as a virtuosic instrument. You have to be really good to try to do this stuff and to learn it and to pull it off and perform it successfully is not often done, to tell you the truth. So the text is by Federico Garcia Lorca. Ominous words. Now, why Garcia Lorca, 1898-1936? He was a Spanish poet, and here it shows him making a broadcast for a Spanish radio station around 1929. He got himself into some trouble and had a few enemies, and it paid him years. Possibly he was assassinated. Federico Garcia Lorca was a Spanish poet, playwright, and theater director. He introduced avant-garde styles of symbolism, futurism, and surrealism to Spanish literature. He was an outspoken socialist, perhaps a communist, and he was assassinated at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. They were pretty basically fascists. And then Lorca also was a homosexual, which didn't go off very well either. So he and I believe two other individuals were assassinated at the same time, abducted and taken out and shot. And then their bodies were disappeared. They never found the bodies. But that's what the stories report. So the George Crumb piece, Cabalito Negro, ABA form, ternary, no firm sense of meter. Flutter tonguing is when you play a wind instrument and you repeat your tongue like in flutter. That's what that means, and it creates a special sound. Glissandos, we talked about that in part one when you on this to create a special effect. Whispering, this is all part of the vocal part. Piccolo percussion, disjunct vocal line, very difficult to sing. And the vocalist neighs like a horse. Let's see if we can hear that. Highly disjunct. Atonal, of course. Well, it's not of course, but it is here. Little black horse, the words, little black horse, where are you taking your dead rider? Little cold horse, what a scent of knife blossom. I don't know what knife blossom is. I'm trying to find out what that is alluding to, and I didn't come up with anything. I think maybe you do. Little black horse, little cold horse, little black horse. I don't know what style that is. Symbolism? I don't know. You tell me. And here's a performance of Cabalito Negro, from his second book of madrigals, written by George Crumb. When was this first published? Does it tell us here? 1965. 1965. And that is the end, short presentation, chapter 62, part A on George Crumb.